On this episode of the Not So Average Jane Patreon, Lacy Keller joined the Marines motivated by patriotism. She soon found herself operating large machinery in support of 2 deployments to Afghanistan and eventually returning home broken, looking for help. After self-treating her PTSD with less desirable methods, she leaned into the advice of a friend, working her way back to herself. Now she inspires others to do the same.
We are back again with another amazing female combat veteran on the Not So Average Jane Patreon. Today, I have with me Lacy Keller, who has graciously come on to share her story. Lacy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dallas. I greatly appreciate all you're doing.
Yes, it's a necessary mission that I feel like we're all kind of realizing needs to happen. We need to be able to share our stories. We were chatting just a moment ago, and you said that we needed to change the narrative, and I said, what narrative? Because there really hasn't been one written other than, we're invisible or silent. And so that's really what this platform is about in supporting. So, Lacy, let's just start from the beginning, and maybe you can tell me how you even came to enlist into the military.
Yeah, so I grew up rodeoing my whole life with horses, and I feel like that really set the foundation of a patriotic background for me. Like I was that little girl that always wore red, white, and blue. I loved
Mhm.
to carry the American flag. And I just had this overall feeling that like somebody should serve their country in some shape or form. Didn't necessarily have to be to the military. I don't know why I thought that. I don't think my parents really taught it to me. It's just, I don't know if it's just born in me or what, but I feel like a warrior spirit has always lived inside me. But I was a freshman when 9/11 happened. And so I think that like kind of set the tone. And some might say like, I'm sorry, as a freshman in high school, I should say. So yeah, it just kind of set the tone. And I don't know if you would say that I was like a victim or a part of the rage military that happened, but I remember everybody coming together during that time. I remember, NFL players quitting their professional teams to go fight in Iraq. Like it was a totally different side of the country that, I had never seen or I probably never will see again. So, and I think I just wanted to be a part of that. Um, I didn't enlist until I was like 21. And that was because I had my horse that I had trained myself, and we had been to nationals for high school rodeo, and we had many accomplishments. And so I knew like joining, I would have to leave him behind. And that was something it took me quite a few years to like come to grips with, honestly. But I was like 21 and I was like, you know, trying to be a hairdresser and working part-time at Macy's and going to the barrel race, spending my last $35 to enter her. And it just was like, this is like probably not the greatest life choice. But I reached the point where I was like, I need to do something bigger and better. And I had regretted not joining. And so I was living with a family at the time. My friends, I had trained their pony, and he had been in the Marine Corps. And he was like, I think that like the type of people you will meet is more your style in the Marine Corps. And so that's kind of what got me to join the Marine Corps. So yeah.
Oh, wow. So first, I can relate with the horse thing because I'm a horse girl too. So I get it. And it's funny, kind of on a sidebar, everyone thinks people that own horses are like rich and wealthy. And it's on the contrary. We're all struggling to keep spending our last $35 for entry fees. So I get it. I mean, there's a small percentage out there that are wealthy horse owners, but I don't know what's going on there, but I'm not on that train. So I get it. So not leaving your horse behind and then kind of finally being exposed to someone who was actually in the military to kind of maybe give you a little bit of that push.
Yeah, I think it would all kind of happen. Like my best friend ended up joining the Air Force, and we had talked about joining in high school. So he enlisted like 6 months prior to me. And so I
Okay.
flew down and watched him graduate at Lackland there. And so I don't know. I guess maybe I just kind of was following what we had always planned on doing. I just went a different route about it.
Yeah. So join the Marines. I mean, I think about the branches and even, being in the Army, like you think of the Marines and they're like the diehard. So as a woman a young woman to say, okay, I'm going to join the Marines. I mean, that's a huge step forward into an unknown world of male dominance, quite frankly. So let's
Yes.
talk about some training, talk about boot camp and your specialization training and what you went to train for.
Yeah. So I'll also add, like, I grew up riding bucking bulls and horses,
Oh
and I
gosh.
didn't
So
stop till
yeah,
I was
you
like
you're
16.
an adrenaline junkie, aren't you?
I am very much so. So
Hey, it's all starting to make sense.
there's actually, like, I have it on film, like, Steve Kenyon, he's from here, he's on the Cowboy Channel now, like, big anyways, but, like, I was at a junior rodeo, I did calf roping and bull riding, bareback riding, and was even on rodeo court, so it's just like I was getting on always like, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lacy Joe Evans show," you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was used to, like, a male space, a
Okay.
very male dominant space. Had already faced, not being told I could ride bareback horses. Um, I didn't really care so much about the bull riding by the time I got into high school, but I was really good at riding bareback horses. And so, like, not being able to do that in high school rodeo sucked, even though I actually got on a couple of exhibitions during high school rodeo and stuff like that. So, but anyways, I was used to, like, that male dominant space, and I know, like, at that from such a very young age, because I started doing it when I was like 6 years old. And a lot of times I was the only female back there as well. So that, I think, honestly set me up for a lot of success for what, like, I endured in the Marine Corps. But I'd go to Paris Island, so completely across the country, from Washington State. I was the only female at the time. Like, my recruiter had never even, had a female. I walked in, like, they didn't recruit me, right? Like, I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I told them I wanted to go into the combat engineer field because I wanted to be as close to combat as I could get. So yeah, I just kind of laid it all out. He didn't know like
He didn't
that
know
I
what
left
to
a day
do with
later than
you.
you guys. Yeah, he didn't, he didn't have to make me work out or do any of that stuff because I power lifted in high school too and stuff like that. So I don't know. I had a lot of disciplines already with me, I guess you could say. But yeah, so clear across the country in March in Paris Island. Like, I did not like boot camp. It wasn't like hard for me. Like, the physical aspect actually was like the easiest part, and it was a relief for me. I hate, like, yelling in a classroom, just like that sound.
Yeah.
Still, I'm like, oh, like I would rather go to, like, the Marine combat training we do for a month is, like, way better and more my style than, shouting drills and doing drills and all that. But it does have its purpose, and I totally understood it when it came down to, like, being completely surrounded in combat. Like, your training just, like,
Yeah.
clicks in, and it all has its purpose. But um a lot of the guys would joke around and, like, say boot camp was hilarious time for them, and me, I'm like, ugh, that was, like, awful. I don't
Yeah.
want to go do that again. But yeah, so I don't know. It wasn't too bad, but then, like, the Marine combat training for a month, like, that was nice. Like, that was enjoyable. We're out in the woods, we're hiking around, we're, like, learning more practical skills, I feel like.
Right.
And then I got put as a heavy equipment operator because I was over 5'6". So you have to be over 5'6" to be a heavy equipment operator. And I think, like, I'm gonna guess they were probably trying to allow more females into those roles. So another girl and I from my actually platoon and boot camp ended up being heavy equipment operators. So I got to go to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and we were, like, the only two females.
That's where I trained. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Fort Missouri, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't bad. And then I got I enjoyed it. I loved it. Like, I grew up operating tractor, working the arena, right?
Right.
I drove combine, so the machinery part of it did not scare me at all.
Mhm.
And I was like, man, this is like really badass. This is so cool. Like
Right.
how lucky am I, right? That's how I saw it.
Here is this,
And
just to, what year did you go through training?
so I 2008. So I
2008.
was
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So sorry, yeah. Yeah, I went to boot camp March of 2008. So yeah.
So you went to Fort Leonard Wood. That's funny. I didn't realize that other branches trained there. I know that they're the hub for military police,
Mm,
combat engineers, and or just engineers in general, and chem. So I didn't realize other branches went there. So that's interesting
yeah.
to know. That's what I did my entire training there, basic training all the way through what the Army calls AIT. What do you guys call your specialized training?
MOS school.
MOS
So
school.
military occupational specialty
Yeah.
school. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. 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 Totally different languages, right? There's a language barrier between branches, but we're all doing the
Minor.
same thing, but a
We got
different
to spell it out for our civilian listeners anyway. So all right,
yeah.
so it's 2008. I wrote 18. I don't know why.
Okay.
2008, you're finishing up training. So after training, where was your first duty station?
I got stationed out in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, so completely across the country from all my friends, family, anything I'd ever really known. And I kind of hit the ground running. I
Mhm.
got assigned to a line company, so it was 2 platoons of combat engineers and then a platoon of what we called heavy equipment. And so it was heavy equipment operators, motor T operators, welders, and mechanics. So we were basically a self-sufficient company, if you will. So,
And
and I go ahead.
now I was just gonna ask, I'm like thinking of all of these careers, right? These job roles. So my
Uh-huh.
natural question is, how many females are in your company?
Four,
Four. Out
four,
of how, and approximately how many?
and out of like almost 140. Yeah,
140.
yeah, yeah. So I was the only female in my platoon, and then there was 3 other combat engineer females. So yeah, yeah. And so I got there like mid-September, and 2 weeks later we left for 29 Palms for pre-deployment training for a month for Iraq
Mhm.
initially. So yeah, I hit the ground running. Who is now my best friend. my, the first sergeant of the company sent her out to introduce and have the talk with me, and you know, tell me basically not to sleep around with the guys and stuff. So otherwise, it would be detrimental to my career.
You're
But it's
laughing, and I want to laugh with you. It's
I
funny
know,
from our
but it's not
perspective,
funny.
but it's not
Yeah,
funny. And
funny. Yeah,
so I'm gonna get a little serious on you because
yeah.
how many men were pulled to the side and told, hey, by the way, don't sleep around? Zero.
Not a
Zero.
single one.
But
Not a single one.
there's 4 of you in a company of 140, and they pull you aside pre-combat and tell you specifically, basically, don't go be a whore.
Yeah. No,
And
this is not pre-combat. This is
oh,
like sign my checklist of checking in. Like I'm still in my
in the
alphas checking out my sea bags.
getting
Yeah.
ready to go to your first duty station.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, what a
Yeah.
welcoming conversation. Um, yeah. So I I can't help but think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I can't help but think,
Yeah.
why? I'm a why person. So why did they feel so inclined to have these conversations with the women coming into the unit versus the men? And I
Right.
feel that it's because they have I'm still just call it what it is, because we can get pregnant, and then
Yeah.
we can't do our job, and there's this whole obligation to take care of us and to cater to us whether it's PT or what we're wearing or everything in between. So they have this lecture with you about not sleeping around and being a whore as you come into the unit. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the United States military. All right, please continue.
Yes.
My fire is getting lit a little bit, Lacy. Can you?
No, you're fine. Hey, it's all good, girl. I get lit really easily on some stuff too. So I hear you. Yeah, it was yeah, and even my best friend, right? She like told me, she's like, yeah, she's like, uh-oh, she's a real pretty girl. Like that she's gonna, you know, attract a lot of guys. And yeah, luckily, like I said, I had being a bareback rider and a bull rider growing up,
Yeah,
I
unfortunately, you're
was used to it.
acclimated to the behavior.
Yeah, I was,
environment.
and I had already, yeah. So, I don't know. Yeah, the male attention didn't, and I already knew by that age too. You just don't shit where you eat, I guess, is,
Yeah,
you know, to put it frankly. I don't know if that's okay to say that, but yeah.
it's raw here. It's raw. If you can't handle these
Okay,
conversations, you
good.
should probably not
Okay.
be on this Patreon. Sorry, everybody. Sorry, not okay. So
Sorry.
now you bounce back to the other side of the country, getting ready to prepare to bounce back to the other side of the world.
Mhm.
Continue, please.
Yeah, so we go to training. It was good. Like I learned, you know, that first month out there in the field that like the way to be able to be considered half-ass equal would be to be amazing at operating heavy equipment. And then of course keep my first class, everything else, right? Your first class high PFT and expert rifle and like all, you know, all the checks is. But yeah, that's what that first month taught me. And then I was able actually to get to move in with Rachel, my now best friend. She was a corporal at the time. You know, I was just a PFC, so an E2. So she was an E4. So luckily we became friends over that time, and I earned her trust in a month, luckily. So that I wasn't going to be out whoring around and, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know, bringing a bad name to women in the Marine Corps, if you will. So yeah, that was like a blessing. And anyways, orders got canked to Iraq. Obama got elected, so we were supposed to like deploy late January, early February to Iraq. We ended up deploying late May, Memorial Weekend, to Afghanistan in 2009. And yeah, when we got to Camp Leatherneck there in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, it was a tent city. Tents were barely staying up because of sandstorm and stuff like that. Living conditions, I mean, yeah, I still to this day, like I try not to use a porta potty because I've just like been traumatized by them, like because there was no way to pump them, you know. So if you wanted to call home, you might have to wait like 3 hours at night and lose sleep. Chow hall lines were insane. But yeah, we hung out for like just like a month and a week or so, like 5 weeks. And then they kind of did the big push during the 4th out that direction with the infantry units, and then engineers follow behind. And so I fortunately got to leave base. And my best friend and I, she was with me, Rachel. So that was great. But yeah, we were told we were going to be gone 8 days. Then we ended up being gone like 8 weeks. So out in the field, just out building things, supporting like the first voting that they had there. We helped support security for that. Just, yeah, from putting in roads, bridges, building berms with the D7. You know, it was like what Marines like live for, right? Like what you want to do. So it was good. That first month though, like waiting to leave, I was the first group of women that was trained for the female engagement team, but I never ended up going up on any missions with them because I was needed so much for my as being a heavy equipment operator. So it was, I mean, we got shot at a couple times, couple IDF. So I mean, but ultimately, like we were out there, you know, being Marines, like building things and whatnot. And I ended up getting a meritorious promotion from that deployment. They had one to give in my platoon or in my company, and they ended up giving it to me. So for all my efforts. So that was pretty cool. I came back and got pinned on as a corporal and NCO. So yeah, that pissed a lot of guys off too. So, but like,
That's amazing.
I mean, like that
Amazing
first month, like
accomplishment.
that first 5 weeks on Leatherneck, like I volunteered. I did all sorts of runs. I did the shit runs like all over, but actually kind of worked out because I would like move like AC units and stuff like that. And somebody would let me use their satellite phone to call home, you know, when I had to go wait 2 hours to use the phone.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the FET training, then like I did, you know, some martial arts. So I moved up like a belt color and stuff like that. So I mean, I was just trying, you know, I was trying maybe
Yeah.
twice as hard compared to others. I don't know, but either way, it caught a lot of attention. So it was good. Then we came back like just like the end of November, and we rolled right back around to go back out. We left again July of 2010. So, but with a different unit. And then like most of the people I had deployed with, they were either re-enlisted and moved on, or they had gotten out. And so we were like, you know, half building up a new platoon,
Yeah.
had to prove myself all over again, you know, to like half the guys. But yeah, it was that deployment is when like shit hit the fan, I would say. Like, and this is when things got real. Like we got there July of 10, and we were going into Sangin Valley, Afghanistan, and it was so heavy combat wise that they didn't let females go up there. So my platoon actually left without me. It was probably the worst 2 weeks of the Marine Corps for me. I was
You just
an
stayed back at the fob
NCO.
with,
I had been. What's that?
you just stayed back at the fob with randomness and everyone else.
Well, with the other platoon that was back there.
Okay.
My gunnery sergeant, he had just came off the drill field, so he was like raring to go, you could say. And he just had a knack. He honestly kind of took some of the best people in their fields, whether they're combat engineer, sweeper, you know, whether they were a bulk feeler or a motor T operator or heavy equipment operator. He kind of tried to, I don't know, he had his way. he had the knack. And so, yeah, it was awful. I was so pissed because, like I said, like I had 2 meritorious promotions underneath my belt, and I was the only NCO that had been there before to Afghanistan.
Right.
There were some that had deployed to Iraq, but it's a totally different ball game, you know.
What
Some
was the
similarities,
fear?
yes. But
What was the fear, or
what's that?
what was the fear of, because it was so heavily combat, they didn't want you to go forward because you're a female. But what was the actual fear? That you were going to be captured?
I
That,
don't think so. That
like,
was never a
what,
feeling I got.
and
I
why
don't. They
discriminate at
wouldn't
that
say.
point?
They never said. They never said.
Because it's
I was.
discrimination. I mean, you've proven
It
yourself
was
time and time
discrimination.
again. You've
Yeah.
already been there, done that. And then they just leave you behind because you don't have the right body parts, apparently.
Yeah.
And never
Yeah.
elaborated, never explained it to you. Did you ever
Nope.
ask or challenge them
Which
why?
I started to, and I kept like, there were a couple things I did, and I just kind of kept like putting one foot in front of the other, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and but it, yeah, I didn't quite know what to do because it's like the wild wild west, you know,
Right.
like does things really happen? Like it's like one of those things. It's a double edged sword, right? Uh if I would have, I don't know, like made a big fuss about it, then maybe they would have punished me even worse, right? Or like, you know, gave me some other duty. It's like, I don't
Right.
know.
No, I understand what you're
I
saying. I
Yeah,
think in a
it's
way,
almost
like,
like, yeah, like I feel like a lot of women like and I'd have to ask myself this, and I've, done it through my interviews that I've done with other women, and it's like they didn't, come forth with their sexual assault because they didn't want to be punished. Like, it's easier just to kind of move forward, and it's not, does not make it right in any way whatsoever. Um, but that's like where I was at, and I think what I thought like would protect me the most.
Right.
Um, yeah,
If you complain about their decisions, then you're undermining their decisions, and then there's repercussions. Yeah.
there's hell to pay.
For those
There's
of
hell
you
to pay.
who haven't been in the military or aren't around military, it's a whole nother world. It's kind of a, make up your own rules type of situation, especially in a combat zone. You can't just run up the chain of command, and if you do, you're going to make a lot of situations worse. So it's exactly what Lacy is saying. It's kind of this double-edged sword, and you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So you kind of pick the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. So that's what I thought was best for me at that time, and I just kind of
Yeah.
kept putting one foot in front of the other. But luckily, um, they needed to bring another heavy equipment operator up there, and all the boys went to bat for me. They were like, "Get her ass up here. She's the best. She doesn't need to live any other place. She doesn't need her own special quarters. Like, bring her up here." And so Gunny had me flown up there on helo. So yeah, and
VIP treatment into combat, that's always nice.
So yeah, I when I got there, like, we were staying in like it was a drug lord's mansion, if you will. And we had a tent or whatever, and I just had my little corner, and I just put up my little tarp, and like if I needed to change, then I would change. But like, hey, like, and we just kind of kept it hush hush, like, if you will. And like whenever because they had like little portable showers there or whatever, but it's a matter of survival. I always took a battle buddy. Like, at that point, like, one of the guys, like, he's like my best friend. He honestly saved my life. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. But like, I trusted him, and like so many of my other like guys in my platoon, like, with my life. Like, I knew like nothing would happen to me, and that, I can say that that nothing did. So but yeah, it was kind of, we were breaking the rules a little. But yeah, so we got to go out. Like, we were taking over like a big part where the British were. So we were tearing down the bases that we weren't going to keep. So we would start and we wouldn't stop. So sometimes, like, I operated like I stayed up for over 36 hours straight, with little breaks in between. But I was very effective and efficient at what I did. And at that time, like, then we started, I started getting shot at like a lot, right? Because you're in heavy equipment, you're mobilizing things. So, and that's just motivation to just keep plucking away at it and going, and getting the job done. So yeah, it was intense. But it was like what I signed up to do, So I have no regrets, like, in that aspect at all. One day, like, we were putting in a bridge across the river, September 13th. It just happened. We call it Bloody Monday. Kind of called ourselves Cowboy Charlie because it was we were Charlie Company, but it was a bunch of rednecks from all over the country. And so it was pretty badass. Like, whether it was from upstate New York, Indiana, Kansas, like Northern California, like, we came from all over. And so, like, we ended up getting surrounded twice that day, and ran low on ammo twice. Luckily, we got resupplied in between. From like that drug lord mansion, they came down and resupplied us, but it was so big that they dropped a 5,000-pound bomb. They dropped a J down when I was in the 50 cal turret. Like, I was like, whoa, like, things are real. So it was a pretty big bloody battle. So, but it was we survived. It was crazy to see the instincts and training kick in.
Yeah.
I remember like I went to machine gun course that spring before we had left, and I like loved it. So like we got to take apart, all the bolt, like, even the 13 pieces in the 50 cal bolt, and like put it back together and assemble it, in less than 3 minutes, all sorts of stuff. And I just remember like by the second time I was like, dude, I want to get behind a machine gun. Like, and so I got up in the 50 cal the second time and I went to like reload and it just was like, and I was like, whoa, like I just did that, like without presentation or
Yeah.
anything. It was like we got surrounded and we were just like this small little platoon of engineers.
Mhm.
And like we just dispersed and handled, and held our ground. Like it was crazy. Yeah, I don't know. It's like the ultimate
Well, that's why
rush,
we
I guess.
train the way we do, and we repeat
Yeah.
it so many times, and it's over and over again because it has to be second nature. You have to get to a point. Actually our first like big interaction, we'll call it an interaction, right, with the enemy.
Yeah.
We're traveling down the road not far from where we were, and we were in two deuces, and the deuce behind me got hit, and I couldn't hear. I pretty sure I like went into some foggy state of mind. I'm actually being next month being evaluated. Actually, it's this month now. It's October. This month finally being evaluated for a TBI for that event. And I just remember just instinctively in training, I always went to the 9. Like, okay, we're pulling security. Like, I need to go to the 9 o'clock. And that's just like what happened. And so it's just amazing to allow your subconscious to take over in those high chaos
Yeah.
moments. But this goes back to kind of what you were saying about training, right? Like that yelling, the screaming, the high stress chaos, like that, those things happen for a reason. And a lot of people who have not been through training or bitch about, how hard training is, and there needs to be, like when I first started hearing that the Air Force, I believe, has always had timeout cards. And when after I had got out in 07 and realized that the Army was starting to implement these timeout cards, I was pissed because
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to throw up a timeout card in combat. Like, I'd love to see you throw that card up, like it's going to get shot out of your hand. And it's meant to weed it out. It's meant to take the weak-minded, no offense, but if you're not at a level of strength mentally, emotionally, and yes, of course, physically, that's kind of a given.
Yeah, like given. Yeah.
Right. But like the mental and emotional aspect is just as important, because here you are, you have a mission, you're moving and building structures in the combat zone, and people are getting pissed off and they're coming at you with it. So not only do you have to stay on point for your mission, but you also have to defend yourself. And on top of that, you're dealing with all of the added stressor of being one of 4 females in this, like it's a lot, and a lot of people don't realize that. And so my hat is off to you. Thank you for just being you. You're just another badass woman I can add to my sidekick of amazing women that I have now in my life. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of set that stage and bring it full circle on why we train the way we do and why it's important for it to remain that way.
Yeah, it's very important. Like, and if, like, I'll just say it, like, if there's males out there that need to throw a time card, I guarantee you there's females out there that don't want to throw in a timeout card, like utilize the full population.
Well, and I don't want to
what-
be, have in a situation where the person to the left or the right of me is like freaking out on the inside. I mean, we're all freaking out a little bit, right? But to freak out to a point that you can't make a decision or you can't rationalize what needs to be done next, because you're now not only putting yourself at risk and your life at risk, you're now putting my life at risk. And that's where it gets bad. So
yes, for
all right.
sure.
So back to your second tour in Afghanistan in a heavy infiltrated combat zone that you're allegedly not supposed to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess
Because
like
you have a vagina. And
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, obviously you're here today. So that mission got wrapped up. How long were you there during your second tour?
7 months.
7 months.
So yeah. And like there was things I wore my hair in a bandana, I when we go to like outposts to like fortify and build them up for like grunt units, infantry units that had
Mhm.
just pushed out there and maybe taken over the area.
Yep.
Because we kind of just fall right in behind them, or
Mhm.
we're like building a bridge out for them, right? Like it's kind of like give and take a little. Um, but like sometimes they'd be like the I guess they would approach the guys and be like, "Oh, we hear there's a female that's an operating that loader or dozer or whatever," and they're like, "Yeah, like don't mess with her." So like, I just hid the fact the most I could. I didn't ask for any special attention. I was literally
You
trying to like pave the way, and
you
like
get the
show that
impression that they were somewhat like soliciting, for lack of a better term?
the other guy, not
Yeah.
the guys on my
Yeah, yeah,
platoon, but
yeah.
like
Your
the
guys
other
were
guys. Yeah.
basically telling them back off, but
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I just when if I wasn't operating, I just went in the like an MRAP or something and just like hung out. But most of the time I operated like
Yeah.
sun up to sundown, like sometimes 16, 17
Probably
hours a day.
it probably felt like more of one of the safer, as crazy as it may sound, one of the
Safe.
more safe places for you to be.
It was. It was a very safe place for me to be. Like you can lock the cab, like it's up armored, like I don't know. Yeah, it
Right.
was like
I get it.
uh, so yeah, but yeah, we ended up like going out and rebuilding one of the first places I tore down before I left, and I think that's when I like also lost uh the belief in like what we were doing over there, so we stayed alive and we fought for each other to stay alive, and that's priceless. And that's a love like you it's a certain type of love, like I can't explain it to you. Like there's a really cool like Morgan Freeman documentary, The Story of Us. I don't know if you've seen it, but he interviews like different societies of what love is, and he interviews the medal recipient honor and like talks about like the love that you have with your battle buddies. And it's like it's true, and I'm just like thankful today that I have a husband that like admires and respects that, so like we kept each other alive and stuff like that. But I had like kind of lost, I was kind of ready to go home. I was like, I'm over this. Like there's other things that happen, I was chased with IDF mortars in my D7 on the side of a mountain. Like, I have no idea like how I'm here today. Like, I mean, a suicide bomber blew up 50 yards in front of me on a motorbike. Like, I don't know. I think my threshold got hit, and I was like, I don't know if I believe like if we're doing any good here, And so cause we were like completely in a whole bunch of like poppy fields too, you know? So I don't know. And there was like local people there that supported the Taliban and proudly did, but like come find out like those Taliban like brought like a lot of infrastructure to them. So like after going to college and, looking back at things, I don't know, but I'm alive, and I don't know if we did any good over there or not, but that's not up for me to determine, But I guess I did my job, and luckily we're all still here,
Mhm.
So somehow, but yeah. So I came home and yeah, no sleep, freaking war nightmares, like freaking relived it all over, relived bloody Monday and bullets flying between my brother's freaking legs. Like I just, there were so many close calls that I kept reliving them, and then I would relive them at night and they wouldn't be close calls, right? So um I just remember like a lot of veterans, like young veterans, dying from being misdiagnosed at the time while I was still in, you would still hear about it. And I knew that wasn't a route I wanted to go. My gunnery sergeant made sure he was like, you need to do your VA disability claim. So I went and seen a guy for insomnia, and he's like, you have some severe PTSD. And he's like, I encourage you to go get help while you're still on active duty here on Camp Lejeune. And I was like, man, I'm like, dude, nobody's going to believe me. I'm a woman. Like, we don't do stuff like this. And out of respect for that psychologist, and he was a Navy veteran, I was like, well, I felt like I owed it to him, right? Like, I don't know why, but I did. So I went on base and I seen a psychologist, and that was a joke. He was like, so you've seen a lot of combat? And I was like, I have. And I was like, yeah, man. I'm like, I can't sleep. I have war nightmares. He's like, well, like, what do you want? I'm like, I want to sleep. I don't know. Like, can I talk? Like, do you talk about this? Like, I don't know. Right.
Like,
And,
he's supposed to be the professional here helping
yeah.
me.
And
Like,
I'm
you're telling
and
him,
like,
these are my issues, these are my problems, help me. And he's like, what do you
like,
want me
yeah,
to do about it?
what do you want? And I'm like,
Okay.
I just want to sleep, man. Can I sleep? So he was willing to give me whatever I would say, but I didn't know of anything. And so I opted for taking some melatonin and some I took a couple muscle relaxers. I could only take those like on a Friday night because I would be dead like the next day.
Muscle relaxers for insomnia that was caused by PTSD.
Yeah, and tension. So yeah, I did that a couple times, like on the weekend, because like I said, I was like dead the next day, I couldn't function. Because I still had a year left on active duty. And so anyways, I got to a point where I just stopped doing that. I definitely was guilty of self-medicating, drinking too much on a Friday and Saturday night just to think I was getting sleep, but I really wasn't, right?
Like, pass out blackout drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then like,
there's no judgment.
It was also
here,
like,
Lacy. No judgment
huh?
here. There's no judgment here.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a really, really like rough year. I was still on active duty. I was going to school during my lunch and in the evenings, because I knew I wanted to go to college after I got out. But yeah, it was tough. It was hell. And like not only was I like dealing with the combat, like all my buddies mostly that I went through it with had gotten out by then, so I was like all alone, I felt like. And like then like there was like nobody that could comprehend what I had been through,
Right.
And like, and then like how do you even begin to like tell Marines that, like, because they're gonna be pissed off and like kind of jealous that you got that? I don't know. So, but it would always show whenever we did uniform inspections, right? Because I have a combat action ribbon and all that stuff. So, anyways, it was a really rough time. So I ended up getting out in March of 2012. I knew I wanted to go to school. Figured the GI Bill is going to pay for it, so I might as well try to get into a really good school. So I worked my tail off and spent months on end working on a letter to University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and I magically got accepted somehow.
Magically,
but I
worked for that. Don't discredit your hard work.
No, it's a hard school to get into. I know. I got 2 Fs on my transcript from high school because I was like, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go ride my horse.
Same. That was part of the reason I joined the military, is because by the time I realized how important high school was, it was too late.
Yeah.
So I understand.
So I wrote a good character letter, if you will. So, and more recent accomplishments instead of my high school transcript on getting me in there. So yeah, I came home that summer because I didn't find out like if I had been accepted or not till I think like May or April. And yeah, one of my friends at my welcome party home, she told me about a naturopath I should go see. And I was like, okay, and then like, I think it was 2 weeks later, I had such a bad dream and I had fallen asleep with my makeup on for some reason. I woke up and I like cried it all off. And I remember the dream, it was a suicide bomber had ended up blowing up. There was like a rope bridge and I was coming across the bridge. Like my like mom, brother, and dad were never there when I came home from North Carolina because I didn't really want them to be, because I was more like, let me come home and see you. Kind of like pick myself up a little bit better.
Yeah.
And they were there and I was like coming home from war and I had a dream that a suicide bomber blew him up. And then I called the naturopath. She got me in the next day and she saved my life. She like took bad energy and I have not had a war nightmare since April 2012.
Can you talk to me more about the naturopath?
Yeah.
Take a minute. Take a minute. I have seen, I can't tell you how many psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, all of the things. And it wasn't until around this time last year that I met my holistic therapist, and it's highly energy based.
Yep.
So I really understand, and I don't think Jessica knows how intertwined we actually are, just through us chatting. So
Mm-hmm.
I understand how the depths of gratitude, I'm assuming that's what's coming
Yeah.
through. The
Yeah.
depth of gratitude that you have to that person, because I feel the same way about my person too. And I
Yeah.
often think like she doesn't truly understand, which she may or may not, but I feel like she's never going to truly understand the depths of gratitude that I have for her in where
Yeah.
I am today and how I'm able to be who I am today because of her and her hard work and her belief in me. So
Yeah.
I just want you to know I understand what you're feeling, and you just spend the rest
Yeah.
of life making sure that they know how grateful you are,
Yeah.
and you continue
Seriously.
to excel with your life, right? Because it feels like sometimes that you were given a second, third, maybe even a fourth chance by the time you've
Yeah.
been through all the stuff and things. And to be here, for me to be here today, to be able to chat with you is
Yeah.
a dream. And I there's no chance in hell 3 years ago I would have been able to do this today. So I
Yeah.
understand. But for those like, so I have quite a following on, like, veteran following on TikTok. And
Yeah.
most of the guys that follow me are veterans, and they share with me, and I'm sure that maybe you can relate to this. There's something about being able, like, kind of that, as it may sound weird, but kind of like that motherly thing, right? That some
No, you are
men
the mom.
men in military, right,
Yeah.
will feel safe and vulnerable to a woman, even if it's their sister in arms,
Yeah.
and divulge things and talk about feelings that they wouldn't necessarily their brother. So I experienced that in the Army. I experienced that today. And literally just a few days ago, this guy had posted this very, like, worrisome TikTok where he literally grabbed the bottle. Like, the comments were something along the lines of struggling to sleep, nightmares, PTSD, and he grabs the bottle and starts chugging it. So I messaged him, and it was the next morning, but I messaged him and I said, I'm worried about you, brother. Like, do you want to talk? And I just, I want to explore, because again, for me, nothing worked until I met Heather, my holistic therapist.
Yeah.
And so when you share with me that took a more homeopathic, holistic approach, I just want the veterans out there especially to
I
know
know.
there are other options, and you should explore all of them until you find the right fit for you, because there is something that will work, and the bottle's not going to do it, the pills aren't going to do it. Anything in between those things is not going to do it. And the analogy that I used was, you're putting, and everyone's heard this, you're putting Band-Aid on a bullet wound, but until you find every single fragment within that wound and sew it shut, you're going to bleed out. Eventually, you will bleed out. And that is where we lose, 22, which I think that number is low. It's the whole 22. Like, I think that number is low. Fortunately, that's where we lose our brothers and sisters. They finally bled out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's gratitude. Like I said, like Sue saved my life that day, and it's been a journey. And I think like I'm extra emotional because she disappeared for like 2 years because she had cancer. And she just now, like, I think she had to like go off. She had to find her balance between, medical treatment and the holistic side, but praise Jesus, she's here today. Still. So yeah, and that like just recently happened, like in the last month and a half. So it is kind of emotional because she does mean so much to me. And I have like the happy, healthy life I live, like as me, as a wife to my husband, and as a mother to my 2 girls. Like I seriously like owe it to her. So but yeah, it's crazy. A lot of focus on adrenal gland, and care like that, and just so much mindful things. Luckily, horses have always been a huge part of my life. So they are just the most healing creatures ever, but yeah, it's a journey. And I like, if I could say that to one thing, it's like, to somebody, it's a journey. There's no like quick fix, there's no pill, and being happy and healthy takes effort. And so like you have to put out the effort and be willing to change and dive into those dark things, even within yourself, and change who you are to be better. So yeah.
Goosebumps, girl. God, I couldn't say it any better. Things I've been preaching for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. And then I just learned there's a program here in Montana, literally in my backyard, an equine therapy for veterans here. And it's an 8-week program, and they have grants from the VA for it to be paid for. So if you're in the Montana area and you're a veteran and you want to explore equine therapy, take it from 2 horse people. It freaking works. Reach out to me. I will put you in contact. If you're in the Washington area, find Lacy. She can put you in contact with someone there. And either way, reach out to one of us, because I'm sure through our network we can find something in your area. Again, explore all options, because there's going to be something that works for you. And I've not formally done therapy with my horse, but she's taken it upon herself to be my therapist at times. And I didn't realize it's so true though, but people don't realize how in tune horses are with emotion and feeling. And my horse was getting sick. She was getting ulcers, and I compete in barrel racing, so that's not an uncommon thing, right? So, but she was getting them at the most kind of random times, like not when we're traveling, not when we're competing, those times too, but also when we were just home, when she should have been fine and healthy. And one day it clicked, and it's almost like I aligned this timeline of when she was getting sick and when I was having some really hard challenges myself, and they lined up. Lacy, she was absorbing my bullshit and getting ulcers from it. When I like made that connection, I was like, oh my God, I like bawled my eyes out. And then I had to have a little talk with her and tell her, okay, quit absorbing my bullshit. It's my bullshit, not your bullshit. No more. I could tell
my horse is, I can tell, like when my jaw's out, I'm like, oh no, I put Annie's jaw out. Or like when Annie's jaw, my horse is, and I'm like, and I'm like, I'm sorry, girl.
Yeah, I have at
It's
least 5
crazy.
stories that fall in line with exactly what you just said, but
Yeah.
otherwise our viewers are going to think we're absolutely insane. So we won't go down that rabbit hole. So I'm so glad that you found the help that works for you. Other than kind of your mental and emotional battle that you faced, were there any other struggles that you had when you were transitioning out of the military into your now civilian life?
Yeah, it was definitely a struggle, a huge struggle. But when I went back to school to North Carolina, my gunny told me, he's like, just join a VFW, you'll meet people. And I did, and I met a lot of great people. And then I helped also like form the first veteran organization at UNC. So I ended up studying peace, war, and defense. It's like a national security type degree. So there was a lot of really great young kids, a lot of good veterans. Yeah, I just made some amazing connections back there. Um, just immersed myself. I ended up doing an honors program in DC for public policy, and I got to do a lot of cool like veteran and education stuff in DC. And I honestly was so blessed with some of the most amazing mentors,
Mhm.
that like literally took a chance on me, like that public policy professor. Like I had bombed a test, and I honestly didn't think I had bombed a test because I had studied for it. I don't know why. Maybe I was supposed to fail it, so he had to have a conversation with me, and he was like, "What are you doing next semester?" And I'm like, "Going to school." And he's like, "I think you need to go to DC with us." And I'm like, "Okay, sure, why not?" So like I just had a lot of amazing things that I did ethnographical research with the anthropologist back there, and it was great. I made some amazing connections with the guys. I didn't even serve with them, but from in the army side, they were just good guys, and they knew, like, they could tell that I've been through what I have been through, and they let me lead like a whole male dominant interviewing board, if you will, with them. And we talked about combat and females in combat and other things. And so it was a lot of good discussions that happened. And I'm still like very close to them, like the mother figure, like one's going to become a dad. And he called me a couple of weeks ago, just to talk about it and parenthood. And I don't know, it's amazing. I gotta go. They flew me back there last December, with a whole bunch of amazing people that do really cool different things with veterans, from underwater diving, archaeology type stuff in the Philippines, with veterans as therapy, to various professors or more holistic type approaches. It was just a panel of phenomenal people, and I got to go be a part of that. So that was really neat. But UNC it taught me a lot. I met a lot of amazing people. It was like the healing that I needed, and to not be around the small town that I'm from, because I remember like I had gotten out, and I used to stop and get breakfast sandwiches there on the way to high school every day. And this lady was like, and her kids grew up with me, and she's like, "Oh, you just got out, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, my son's flying down to see his buddy who just came back from Iraq and the army, but he fought the real war." I was like, "What's that mean?" like I didn't fight the real war? Like, do you think I was like in a skirt, like someone sitting on a typewriter? I don't know.
I
And I
talked
think
about this with the last veteran that I interviewed, and one of her big things was like going, how like Lowe's has like the veteran parking,
oh yeah.
and like that was my thing. And then she has like combat veterans some type of signia on her vehicle, and someone had approached her and said something along the lines of, "Oh, thank your husband for his service, and I've been told, oh, you can't park here." And I'm just like, motherfucker, are you this is my parking spot. So yes, I get it. And what we decided to agree upon when we were talking about that is just people are just uneducated and
Yeah,
they're
they are.
naive. And I just choose to take that route. And kind of like the southern saying of, "Oh, bless your heart," which, you
Yeah.
know, is key for like 3 other things that you could be
Yeah.
saying. But it is just it's a it's an unfortunate misunderstanding and an
It
assumption
is.
that is horrible. And another thing that I kind of think of when this is brought up, discussing with some of the male veterans that I've met here in the Billings, Montana area, is that when a man walks into the room, a veteran, especially a combat veteran,
Yeah.
9.9 times out of 10, you can guess. I don't know, their demeanor, the tattoos, the way they dress, whatever, right? You can pretty much guess.
Yeah.
But when a woman with the same background, same experience walks in the room, there's like a 1% chance that you're going to guess that she's a combat veteran.
Yeah.
So a lot of bad assumptions. So for our listeners, please don't assume that the woman who is driving the vehicle with something that insinuates she was in the military or parks in the veteran stall at the Lowe's department store, please don't assume that it's her husband or her brother or her son. It might actually be her. It
Yeah.
might. There's only
Yeah.
300,000 of us that served during the
Yeah.
Iraqi and Afghanistan war. And actually, I was just told this past week that by 2025, there will be 424,000 female veterans.
Wow. It's amazing.
So we are not invisible, and we are not going to be silent anymore.
Yes.
Okay, my dear, it has been absolutely amazing chatting with you. I feel like maybe there might be a round 2 in our future. But with that said, I'd like to allow you to kind of have the closing remarks. And the one thing I'm asking all of my amazing, not so average Janes out there is, if there was a new be a female or male, your pick, coming in wanting to join the military, we'll say he or she's joining the Marines because that's your branch. What is the one piece of solid advice that you would pass down to them?
Yeah, so I actually got selected and I was able to go back to the Mission Continues Women's Veteran Conference in DC in 2018. And this was like one of the topics that actually came up, right? And it was like, how do we like change the narrative and how can we like help better prepare like women joining the military for the stuff that they are really about to face that nobody talks about. And you know, whether it be from just not being considered equal, from you know, I know times have changed, but have they really? I don't know. I'm not active duty anymore. um but it's like, how can we better set up our sisters, right, for their service, and especially for our branch. And I think like it's almost like one box doesn't fit everybody and everybody's so different, but I knew like for me it was being really good at my job. And I provided a service that nobody else could do, right? Like essentially, because I was, and that's like what brought me the opportunities that I wanted, and got me the promotions I wanted essentially as well too, and the duties and stuff like that. But um, but I feel like that's not the answer for everybody, and so it's kind of hard. I would just say like, and I hate that it's not equal. But I think like just if going in that you're not going to be considered equal and you're okay with that and like you're just going to do you and be badass, like then that's what you should do, because you should not let anybody's approval or them being, you being considered equal, weigh like your worth and what you do in the service, because we all have different things that we bring to the table. So I think that learning to just be true to yourself in who you are and what you do and what you stand for, like in your core belief, then you're going to be just fine. And if you stick to that, like when you leave, like, you know, and if you leave, but eventually at some point, right, there's an expiration date on the military. Like if you stay true to yourself, like your transition is going to be that much smoother for you in life in general. So, yeah.
I think that's great advice. I really do. Staying true to the core of who you are. And then I think kind of just piggybacking on what you said is accepting, right? Just the acceptance of this and the thing is you're not an equal. You're as a female, you're a woman. You possess a different skill set, different strengths,
Yes.
different weaknesses. And I say use them to your advantage.
Yes. Yep, for sure.
Well, Lacy, it has been a pleasure. I greatly appreciate
Thank
your
you, Bob.
time, being vulnerable, sharing the story. I I know this is going to project into the world and we're gonna help and
Yeah.
change a lot of perspectives and help a lot of people there. So thank you for being a part of this mission. I will forever be grateful to you.
No, I'm forever grateful for you, Dallas. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed this episode. And remember, there's always a lesson with every experience. It's up to you to learn and grow from it.